I chose to spotlight Mae Street Kidd. A lot of people may not have heard about her. You've probably heard about Senator Georgia Powers, many other trailblazers in Kentucky. But I wanted to spend the time, just a few moments, to talk about Mae Street Kidd. She was not only just a trailblazer, she was a businesswoman also. And she provided a very vivid example of the power of voting, just like Representative Brown said. There are consequences on your vote. And the people voted her in, which was great for Kentucky. And not only that, she was a woman. I knew her personally, actually, from the time I was very, very young. She was very, very good friends with my grandmother, and I would see Miss Kidd on numerous of occasions. I always remember her wearing her furs and how beautiful she was. And I did not know at the time that she was of mixed race. And she was always just so classy and elegant, but she was a shark. She stood up for what was right, and she was going to continue to stand up for what was right. Actually, she was born here in Kentucky in 1904. She passed on in 1999, and she worked as a sales agent. She went on to work for Mammoth Life Accident Insurance Company, which was one of the few Black-owned insurance companies in the country. But the corporate offices were here in Louisville, Kentucky. She was a self-supporting single woman of color in 1925. Her biography recounts the discrimination that she encountered throughout her life. She was quoted as saying that she couldn't use the main public library, and she could not go to the first run of movies that they showed on 4th Street here in Louisville, Kentucky. So she worked herself way up in the company, becoming a supervisor of policy issues. She was married and widowed, and she served as assistant director of a service club for Black American soldiers in England during the World War II. And she also came back. She returned to the company as a public relations counselor, a position that she designed for herself. And that gives us a lot of hope that sometimes you got to go to a company and say, hey, you need to create this position for me. She wasn't afraid, she was fearless. She joined Kentucky's General Assembly in 1968. She was just one of three African Americans in the legislature at the time. And the first bill that she brought up and she sponsored was the Kentucky Fair Housing Act. And back at that time, there was a lot of racial discrimination when it came to trying to find a house or trying to find an apartment. And how we look at things now is like, how could that ever happen? Well, it's because of Mae Street Kidd that it's not happening in Kentucky. And she was the first Kentuckian and the first one of Southern states to have this particular bill. She also sponsored legislation to name Martin Luther King's birthday a state holiday. So when you're getting that state pay, not the federal pay, but the state pay on that day, you have to thank Mae Street Kidd. She worked day and night to get bills approved. When bills passed, she cried, and many others cried with tears of joy. And it also, the Fair Housing Act and the Martin Luther King state holiday were very hard to put through, but it was a milestone for Kentucky. In the mid 70s, she learned a little known historical fact that Kentucky had never ratified the 13th, 14th, or 15th Amendments in the US Constitution, which abolished slavery and gave US citizens and the vote to African Americans. So she was determined that she was going to correct this oversight, and she did that. She launched a campaign in 1976. Some were not born at that time, but she had the amendments officially ratified. It passed unanimously. So when you're thinking about slavery is abolished in Kentucky, you can think Mae Street Kidd in 1976. So also, she spent 17 years in the Kentucky General Assembly promoting civil and human rights, housing, and equality. Mae Street Kidd served as an example of the power of the vote to produce leaders who will work for lasting social change. So when you're thinking about things that we take for granted here in Kentucky, a lot of these things that we take for granted, a trailblazer, a businesswoman, and a very savvy legislator, Mae Street Kidd, and we honor her for Black History Month.